There's two people I'm trying to reach. One, someone who's already made a big mistake and they feel like guilt and shame and I can't move forward from this. Hey, I've been there, here's kind of what helped me move through that. Or someone going down that path, someone who's thinking, man, maybe I will make that decision. Or no, I learned the hard way. You don't have to. I believe you're so much more than your worst mistake.
Welcome to another Reach Training Podcast, and today we have our very first interviewee. I don't even know how to say it, but we got a first interview on the Reach Training Podcast, and that's a very close friend of all of ours, Coach Brandon Puffer, one of the first guys I met when I moved to Austin about 2 years ago, and we'll get into some of those stories. But we wanted to have him on for a few reasons, but most importantly, he just had a book that was released that we want to talk about and get into. But the reason we want to talk about the book is not because he's a good friend, but because I think it's going to really encourage others and it's going to uplift people, and it's going to just help people whether you're struggling or whether you're trying to achieve a goal. And so I'm actually going to, Brandon, pass me that book. So this is Puffer on the front of the book. It's called From the Bullpen to the State Pen, and we're going to dive into it a little bit. But I just wanted to give him a quick introduction. Former MLB player. On his MLB website, whatever bio page, it has him listed at 190 pounds. And you can tell, obviously not, right? We're kind of rocked up. But we wanted to have Puff on and talk about the book and just talk life in general, and just kind of hang out and chop it up. So, Puff, thanks so much for coming on. And I remember one of the first things I remember about you, before I even knew your story, like when I met up with you, I had no idea, anything. I could tell right off the bat, like, man, this guy is like super encouraging. Like, I feel encouraged talking to him, like I was like, this is awesome. And then reading the book and getting to know you more, like stuff just kind of makes sense. But that was one of the main themes from the book that I took away, was just like the overall encouragement theme of it to other people. So before we dive into the book in any more detail, you want to just maybe say, how cool I am from hanging out. Yeah.
How much time do we have?
No, but if you wanted to maybe just kind of, tell some people just briefly about yourself in like a 5-minute, 3-minute kind of like broad view of the book without giving too much away, because we want you to buy the book, and then we kind of just chop it up and kind of go from there.
No, absolutely. And first off, Steve, just thank you for having me. It is an honor to be here, and I did not know this was the first time you guys were doing this, so it's even more of an honor. And basically, I appreciate what you said about being an encouragement. Kind of that Barnabas spirit is something I've always wanted to be. I wanted to encourage people. I think that comes mostly from my mom, who's a big encourager, always has been. It's actually a running joke in our family. If me and my brother start bagging on each other, or my dad, because we all do it, it's like, let's play the encouragement game. So she'll be happy to hear that I'm playing the encouragement game. And essentially just growing up as a youngster, Steven, I wanted to be a major league ball player. That was my goal. That was my dream. Like a lot of young men, whether it's football or basketball or baseball, pro athletes, something we aspire to be. And I had a little bit of a gift or talent to do so, and I put some work in and was able to, achieve that dream, which was amazing, and it was awesome. And I shouldn't say I wish that was into the story, but it certainly is nowhere near scratching the surface of my story, because once I kind of reached that pinnacle, I again had a World Series ring with the Red Sox and had a few big league outings. I had a huge fall from grace from poor choices and things that had, a big theme around this story is one bad night, one choice can flip your life upside down, and it absolutely can. But why I'm so transparent about it is to try to shed light on, our thought process and the people we're hanging around with. And like you, I have an opportunity now to, mentor young men and through baseball and through athletics. And that's the big thing. I look back to being that age and going, I would have never seen what's coming in my story coming. Never, ever. A little compromise here and some thoughts there, and no way, just being a kid, And so that's, like you said, there's two people I'm trying to reach. One, someone who's already made a big mistake, and they feel like guilt and shame, and I can't move forward from this, right? Yep. Well, hey, I've been there. Here's kind of what helped me move through that. Or someone going down that path. Maybe it's a younger athlete that we have, or it doesn't have to be a younger athlete, just someone who's thinking, man, maybe I will make that decision or that choice. And it's the big deal. And my thing was, man, just one night. Who cares, right? No. I learned the hard way. You don't have to, right? Yep. And then on the other side of it, like you said, there is some encouragement in there on, being persistent and perseverance for your dream and your goal. So I think that kind of all encompassing is the story. And then, like it says on the back, I believe you're so much more than your worst mistake. Just encouraging those that are carrying that guilt and shame. Because I certainly have and certainly do. And I have people to this day go, man, is it hard to share that? It's so personal. And it is. It's embarrassing, and all that. But it's like, you know what? It's part of my story. And we talked earlier, if it encourages one person, then it's well worth it.
Yeah.
To drive down to Drip and hang out with Steve and the boys.
Come on.
Yeah.
No, I think the encouragement side of things was huge. And before we keep diving into the book, like when I first met Puff, we met in like Marble Falls or something like that.
Shop
our boy Taylor White hooking us up.
Whitey.
And so just some background for our million of viewers who are going to be watching this. I don't know if you've noticed, but we have blown up, and then we got like 7 views last time. I mean, it's incredible.
Man, at that rate. I mean,
you
guys,
we're doing we're blowing up. But with Taylor kind of connecting us and us getting linked up, so Puffer is now a coach at GPS, right? Rocking the GPS gear, and we train a lot of the kids that play with GPS. They'll kind of send our way, and kind of vice versa. It's like a good community of things. So it's kind of grown from just meeting up and just chopping it up to some work stuff, and then just like don't want to hang out and kind of dive into it. But I'm just gonna dive right into it. You want to just kind of rock and roll? Yeah,
absolutely.
And you can kind of take it the direction how you want to take it, but there's a lot of big themes in the book that I really, really took away. A lot of like quotes that kind of stuck out to me. Don't waste your pain. Being prepared, right? When you're going on the minor leagues before you got called up, being prepared. But the biggest takeaway I think for me that I admired the most was the accountability factor of things. So I say we just jump right into that night, and because I think once you had that accountability, let me ask you this. Did it take you, once you had that night, once you went going to prison, did it take you a while to accept accountability, or did you have it? Because I feel like the accountability is what helped you have good perspective and has helped you become the encourager that you are now, just being like accountable and taking ownership. Does that kind of make sense?
Yeah, no, it does.
Okay.
It absolutely does. And, it's funny because when I share the story, part of it is the night I got arrested, I was obviously overserved. I had known that addiction was a big part of my life, and it wasn't, I just didn't have an off switch. I was kind of all in, all out guy, right? And so even using the term, I was blacked out, I don't like, because it almost connotes I'm not really responsible for it, and I am 100%. And so that, and back to your question though, was it right away? It was pretty early on. I've always known right from wrong. I had a good upbringing. So I've always known, look, you can choose to do whatever you want to do, but you're not going to necessarily choose the consequences. And so when this thing happened, right at first, it was still one of those things where it's like, oh, that was really stupid, and I know I shouldn't have went out drinking, and I made a poor choice. And by the way, I'll go in as much detail as you guys want to, or as little. I'm always conscious of the viewer. If one of those 7 is going to be offended, I don't want.
No, go. We might get 8 though, because my parents might watch now.
Yeah. Well, for your folks. So let me just go through that night.
Yeah.
Okay, Steve. Let's do that. And
real quick before you do, guys, buy the book, because you go into so much detail in the book, right?
Yeah, absolutely. But essentially, it was I had gone back to AA with the Frisco Rough Riders. I don't know, for those who've seen Bull Durham, I always kind of make this parallel. I was that guy, the old guy who had a little bit of big league time, early 30s, and I'm a mentor to these young 19, 20-year-old up-and-comers, right? And so those guys were all over me all year about going out with them. I mean, all year. Come on, because they're youngsters. They're out there doing their thing. I'm like, guys. And I literally said it to them so many times. They're like, it's one night. I said, man, I can ruin my life in one night. I mean, I really could. At that point, I had known kind of what I was capable of in terms of just no off switch and just going too far, that kind of thing. And so, man, and the biggest reason I'm so transparent about it, too, is when I did go to prison, and I'm going to back up to that night, and really got introspective and had plenty of time on my hands to figure things. It was like, well, okay, yeah, you got choked, you made a bad decision, but what in your mind, I'm going to say right mind because you weren't, decided that was going to be okay, and what I'm about to get into. And so then you had to unpeel a bunch of other layers of what did I let in my life, and things that happened to me when I was young, and, different stuff like that. And so I want guys who have, men and women who have been hurt, typically hurt people, and it's like, man, we got to head that off. And so I had just lived such and I was a believer, but I still had that God-shaped hole in my heart that I was trying to fill with everything, drugs and alcohol and chasing women and being a tough guy. And it just wasn't there, performance on the field or whatever. And so going back to that night, all these things were prevalent in my life, and I was kind of fighting and tugging back and forth. And I was telling those guys all season, man, I can't do it. Can't go out with you guys. And it was the end of the season. We were celebrating a championship, being in the championship. We weren't through it yet. And I just drove in on a Friday. It was September 13th. I was driving to the ballpark, normal routine like any other day. Man, I'd been doing this for 15 years now. I was a routine guy. You have to be. And it was just boom, boom, boom. And something in me was driving, and I'm like, man, I'm going to go out with the guys tonight. I've had a great year with them. They're awesome kids. We're just going to have some fun. Mm-hmm. And I knew immediately there was this voice of like, don't do it. It's not a good decision. Don't do it. And I would, by the way, I was the chapel leader of the team. So, I mean, living this double life, being hypocritical, the whole thing that comes along with that. And my biggest mistake was not being honest about my struggles, because I felt like they looked up to me, and I felt like I don't want to let them down. So I can't admit that, man, I'm going out on the side and partying, and I'm looking at things I shouldn't be looking at, and my mindset's not what you guys always think it is, And that was my biggest mistake. And I always tell people, just be honest. Find someone you can be honest. Like, I'm messed. Still to this day, I'm intentional about going, look, I might go on podcasts and talk about, getting through this, but I'm still messed up. I'm still capable of anything if I'm not, in word, in prayer, have the right people around me. So, man, we went out on that September 13th. It was like any other night. About 3 a.m, I was back at an apartment complex with some buddies. I was staying at their place because I was in no condition to drive home. They took me to their place. It happened to be the apartment complex I lived in the year before. And there was a young lady that always had like get-togethers and parties, and we'd pull up to our door, and she'd say, hey, you guys come over. No, we're good. And whatever was there that was triggering me was like remembering that. It was like, and again, I got this from them later. They kept saying, just go to bed. Just go to bed. It's late, Buff. Go to bed. No, I got a friend that lives over here. I'm going to see if she's having a party. They're always having people over. It's 3 a.m. They're not having people over. So they eventually like, hey, you're growing, whatever. So I went over there, knocked on the door, no answer. It's 3 a.m, right? Checked the door, it's unlocked. I mean, I had an attorney. Why wasn't the door locked? I'm like, well, that's not anyone's fault, but yeah, I wish it was locked. So it's unlocked, and I just walk right in. And I mean, this is where it just gets so embarrassing, but I'm going to be super real with everybody. Yeah. Whatever led up to that point, I took off my clothes and tried to get in bed with her, and I kind of went to, hey, there's a stranger now in this person's room at 3 a.m. So obviously she wakes up in fear and screams. And you talked about me wanting to be an encourager and add value to people's life. The only thing I remember is hearing that scream and the hurt that I caused. And that was really hard for me, and still is. I mean, because, that kind of event flips someone's life upside down. Like there's it's not just my poor choices or me going, like there's a victim here.
2 lives, yeah. There's
2 lives. And then there's families that are involved, her family, my family. Our decisions, our choices don't just affect us. And that's where I really started going, man, I need to, this is not just all about me. You know what I mean? And so that's what happened. I woke up the next day, September 14th, in an orange jumpsuit. Had a buddy there that was there to bail me out. I said, what's going on? How did we get here? He goes, you called me last night. I thought you were kidding, but fortunately I came to check and you were here. And then I got the paperwork. I was like, oh my gosh, So that happened. I was out on bail, as they call it, for 9 months. We played 2 more games. I didn't tell anybody. I was just kind of there, and I figured I'd go home and things would kind of calm down, and it would be one of those things that kind of, it's a very stupid decision, but it'll boil over. Well, it wasn't. They took it very seriously, as they should, and the district attorney picked up the charges and indicted me and said, hey, no athlete or man or anyone's going to come in here and just walk in someone's door. And I get that, man, right? And so, hey, I put myself in that situation. I'm going to walk through this, and went through a 3-day jury trial. And you talk about surreal and kind of an out-of-body experience when you're in here and they're, it's like the state of Texas versus Brandon Puffer. Man, this is crazy. Like I'm not a guy that's out trying to hurt people. I'm not, wow, but hey, again, one choice, right? And everything leading up to that. And so they gave me a 5-year sentence in prison, and I ended up doing 3.5 years on it. And I'll tell you what, man, Steve, when they gave me that sentence, they came out, the attorney was like, you'll likely get probation. You've never been in trouble, yada, yada. They said 5 years, and I started doing the math on my kids' ages right away. Like, okay, 5, they're going to be, oh my gosh. Took me away, put me in handcuffs. My dad was there. I said, can I go say bye to my dad? He said, nope. They took all my stuff off, put me in the cell. When I heard the bars clang, and this is where, to me, it's surreal, like another out-of-body, it all hit me. I'm sitting in, here it is, man. This is where my choices and my decisions got me. All my belongings, I don't have them anymore. They're not mine. They took them. Got my white jumpsuit, and I'm just sitting there going, man. So what else did I know to do? I was raised in a faith-filled family. My mom's a pastor at Saddleback Church in California. I mean, she instilled faith in us, and I just said, God, I surrender. I've tried it my way. I've tried to beat the system and get around it and do my thing, and I've got to find out for myself, and maybe it'll be different for me, and that won't happen to me, and all the things that our mind tricks us into believing that we can do it a little different than the last guy, right? And I grew up with a father who had addiction issues, and so he had tried to instill all this in me, like, you don't want to go down this path, man, but you got to have some fun until you were 30, whatever it was. And so all that hit me, man, and I just surrendered that day in that cell. And every prayer up to that point, to be honest, was like, I just don't want to go to jail. I don't want to go to prison. I mean, I'm truly sorry for what I did, but I just don't want to go to prison.
Sure.
That was different. That prayer was different. I was like, all right, here we go. What do you have for me? I'll walk it out. If it's prison ministry from within, whatever it is, man. And so other than the hurt of, the victim and her family and my family and being away from my family, I wouldn't have changed a thing, because there's no way that I'm the person I am or the coach I am today without going through that. There's just no way. And so walked that out for 3.5 years, and kind of, we can get into kind of after that. I don't know where you want to go next, but kind of the humility. So accountability is huge. Yeah. We know that. And I've always felt that way. It's like, you know what, if you mess up, just own it. Yeah. Just own it. You know what I mean? But not only that, but humility. Yeah. Humility had to really kick in. And I needed it. I think we all need it at some point, but I really needed it. As athletes, people look up to you and it's like, oh yeah, I got 100%. It going on, right? And no, not really. I needed the humility, man. And so, and I say that because I had to take some very humbling jobs, not only in prison. I mean, I went from pitching in the big leagues and doing all that kind of thing to SSI, janitor, sweeping, mopping in prison, doing whatever I had to do, man. And it was like, from that point forward, I learned the difference between peace and joy and happiness. So happiness, I was happy when I was pitching well, and I was happy when things were going well with my family and I had money and things were. But if you take that away, and your happiness is gone, right? And so now with peace and joy that you can't take away from me, even in prison, mopping floors, just being one with God and just really having that time. Now moving forward, when things are great, I've got peace and joy. It's not like things have been perfect. We've had some struggles. Sure. It's like, okay, but I know where I've been. Yeah. And there's peace and joy that you can't take from me, that you couldn't take from me in an 8x10 cell. Yeah. So it was a huge lesson for me. And there's many, many more that I hope we'll get into. But that's kind of like you said, kind of the Cliff Notes version of, making it and then fall from grace. And it's just really a story of choices, but it's also a huge story of redemption. Yeah, is the part that I just love. Yeah.
I think with the accountability factor that we talked about, I think that is so beneficial for people that have made the mistakes, but also people who are just, for lack of better terms, like haven't made that big mistake. Like if you can own your actions and take ownership of what you're doing, and we're all involved in sports and training, so I know there'll be a lot of athletes watching this, but I think that translates to kind of like their life too, right? Yes. On the field, off the field, it's related. You know what I mean?
Absolutely.
Just the whole ownership aspect of things. There's a bunch more I want to dive into. I don't want to hog the mic if y'all want to jump into and elaborate.
I actually have a question. I have a couple, but one I wanted to speak on. First of all, very good book. One theme that popped out to me very early on, I think you did a good job at the beginning of the book, kind of laying the foundation of your family and your support system. My question would be, how important is it for you to have that support system? Like throughout these situations, obviously the going to jail, that's a big situation. But also, having the kid, going back and finding you're about to have a kid. The trials of just trying to get to the big show, and then going to do that. And even though obviously you're in prison by yourself, that support system is still, when I'm reading the book, is still playing in the background as a driving force to, help you get to this point. So I would say, how important is it for people that are watching that may be in these situations or trying to get to the next level sports-wise or whatever, how important is it for you to have a good support system, and how has that support system helped you so far?
It's a great question, B. And honestly, other than my faith and my walk with God, it's everything. Mm-hmm. The unconditional love that my family showed me during that time, it's unimaginable. I mean, I've got guilt and shame, and I've embarrassed everybody. And, to that point, when you go to ask my parents run into people in our hometown, it's like, oh, how's Brandon? Oh, he's in the big, what team's he with? And they went from that to, oh, please don't ask us what's going on. Really? But they never showed that to me as in, like, you let us down or we're embarrassed. In fact, when my mom You try to get me choked up, man. When my mom would write me, she'd always say, I've never been more proud of you. And I'm like,
Wow.
what? I'm carrying all this guilt and shame, and you've never been more proud. My dad, too. My brother. I didn't know we were going to go there, but
Hey, we're there.
It's raw. We're there.
I told you he does that
Gosh
stuff.
dang it, the
I
silent
told
assassin.
I tried to warn you.
But being, just because I'm processing it as I'm saying it, it's
Right.
like, man, not only having my son at a young age and my parents stepping up and going, hey, you're pursuing this dream and we're going to help you out. Huge. I mean, absolutely couldn't have done it. I mean, it would not have happened without him for sure. But then not only when things are going good, but when things went bad, it was so important. And to your question about, people leaning on that. So the hardest thing for me in prison, I certainly saw race wars and gang wars and riots. And I was telling someone yesterday, like I remember they broke out in a race war at Chow Hall, and they, tear gas and all that. And it was spaghetti day, and that's the best day because you can get full.
Yeah.
And I'm eating my spaghetti on the floor because I'm like, they're about to bust in and take this away from us.
Wow.
Like, okay, all that's terrible. It's awful to walk through, and you see
Absolutely.
some things you don't want to see.
Yeah.
The worst part by far is just not being able to hug my loved ones. Just not being able to reach out and hey, I'm having a rough day, or hey, what's going on with you? It's like, that's it. I could do the other stuff if my family was there. So being intentional, and here's the deal, Brandon, I won the parent lottery, the family lottery. My dad had his struggles, but I mean, when it all comes down to it, modeling that for my brother and I, couldn't ask for more. But not everybody has that support system.
No.
Some people are going to go through some stuff like this and go, well, I don't have that. My parents are whatever they are, and
Right.
so being intentional about who they put themselves around, and I had buddies that you find out who your friends are, when you go through something like that, like who is, and not that I had expectations. I did this to
Right.
me. It's not your job to, but some of the ones who stepped up with letters and books and maybe even like money on your books to get some stuff that, it's like,
Some commissary.
and it showed you on the little printout who sent it, and you're like, oh, wow, man, that's so cool, and you remember that. So it's everything. I mean, the support system is absolute to this day.
Yeah.
It truly is. And so, man, I can never thank them enough, and not that they want me to, but, having the book and sharing the story and allowing them to kind of be proud of that again is awesome. And I know they get some enjoyment, or they're proud of that. But again, when I was sitting at 8x10, not throwing a ball, not doing anything, never been more proud of you. You're walking through something hard, and you're keeping your faith. And I got to encourage guys in prison that would have never known existed. Guys I got to encourage that would have never walking around out here would have even thought about.
Yeah.
And so, and again, that comes from that support system of seeing that walked out to me. They showed me encouragement. They lifted me up, and therefore I could go through my days even in there doing the same for other people.
It's like a support encouragement cycle. Your parents doing that, and now you're getting encouraged. You're in jail where probably not a lot of other people are getting that encouragement, and now you're their main source of encouragement and support. And that's what you still do now, right? Like, encourage others. Like, just being, for y'all that haven't been around Puff, just being in his presence, you feel encouraged. You feel
Absolutely.
small. Don't get me wrong, unless you're Greg.
He don't.
Same size. We're good.
Yeah.
But
Thank you for saying that. That's important. I really do. At the end of the day, I'll be honest with you, Stephen, like if I'm driving here, if I'm walking into the gym this morning, if whatever it is, because again, we talk about intentionality. Like I think I have a bent towards that, but every time I walk in, it's like, God, help me be a light when I walk in this place. Show me who needs encouragement today. My power is my presence. My power is my presence. And like just intentional. And then it's amazing when you walk in, you get in little conversations, be it at the gym or wherever you're coaching, or where those things present themselves if you're open and looking for it and intentional about it.
That's I know Greg has a question, but before he jumps in, that's the theme you just mentioned, the book by our brother Lawrence that you mentioned. The
Practicing
book
his presence,
I read that years ago, and
Yeah.
he gave the example of like if I'm going to bend down to pick up a piece of hay, I want to do it to represent God to the best of my ability.
Yeah.
And so when you read that, I was like, okay, it's Puff. I see some brother Lawrence in you. Like,
See, man. So remember when he was washing dishes?
yes.
I worked in this, they call it the scullery in prison. And I'm talking about it's a little slit in the chow hall where people take their trays and slang them, and you got to get them and keep them washed as quickly as. And I was like, no better time to practice this, man. I'm literally in the same position he is. I don't think he was in prison, but just washing dishes and praising and going.
Right.
To the point where some guys are like, man, you might need to go to the psych ward. What's wrong with you? How are you
Doing that
happy
a
all the
little
time?
too much.
Yeah.
You're too
Wow.
happy. But yes, man. And books like that, As a Man Thinketh by James Allen was another huge one. Obviously, the Bible was I never had so much time to get in the Bible. When I first hit the system, I hadn't had a chance to go to commissary yet. We were on lockdown for 9 days. There's no AC. We're in a metal building. It's about 140 in the metal building, and I just had my Bible. That's all I had, man. 9 days, and I'm like, when? Don't wish it on anyone, but it's like, if you can't try to figure out who you are now or what he has for you and who he is, I don't know when you're going to do it. So, it was a great time to really kind of, get educated and read about some things that normally don't take time to do out here and stuff. So in that regard, but again, it's not built to reform you. It's really not. You have to be pretty intentional about your days. And being a ball player, I think actually helped me because routine. To get through each day, you had to have a routine. It was like, some guys are like, well, what do we do? I'm like, okay, this is my day from this point on. And if it gets messy,
planned out.
Yes. So, man, Brother Lawrence, that's a good one.
Yeah, man. No, but my question was, I sort of wanted to take it back. I know in the book you talk about how you use alcohol as like it was your addiction and you use it as a coping mechanism.
Yes.
And I know, like, if we take it all the way back to when you got drafted, right, young kid coming out, you said you went to Florida from California, so that's one thing. The grind of rookie ball and just climbing the ranks, trying to get to the big show is another mental thing. And then you found out you had a kid, that's another mental thing. So you were dealing with all these things, and then you just spoke about how, as athletes, we want to, put on that persona, like, we got it all together. And as a person who's familiar with addiction, I know a lot of people, and I know that, usually we use things as coping mechanisms because we just don't want to deal with the issue. So I kind of wanted to ask you, like, how did all those things tie into your addiction? Did that have to do with how you got to that point, when you were 15 years in? And, like, how have you gotten past that, and what do you use now? Because I know that's a demon that's still there. Like, people think, like, once you get past it, oh, you're gone clean. Like, it's like you said, it's like I have to do this every day. I have to have my stuff. So what do you use now opposed to what you were doing then to sort of deal with that same demon?
Oh, absolutely, man. And demon's a great word for it. Not everybody calls it that, but at the end of the day, it's exactly what it is. I'm fighting my demons, and everyone has theirs, and they're different in different levels. And someone said it to me the other day, man. I was in a conversation at the gym with a guy who struggled, and he had shared openly that he had done time and all that stuff, and he didn't know anything about me. He's just sharing this stuff, and he's going, man, I struggle with these demons. He goes, they don't go away. And I said, so then I started sharing back, and I said, I know, man. I said, till the day I tell people sometimes, and this is today, and I know I seem happy all the time, and I am, but anxiety and depression are big for me, Greg, and it's most of the time, by the end of the day, it feels like I've done 12 rounds with Tyson in my head. Just to be like, to fight that back. And it's the thoughts, and not necessarily I'm going to go have a drink right now, because by the grace of God, I'm 15 years sober, and I don't think I'm going to go do that, but be careful lest we fall. I don't ever take it for granted, because I had 5 years sober before that other time. But for me, some of the things that I'm very intentional about are wake up, have my quiet time, some prayer, some meditation, some time in the Word. I love positive podcasts, man. I don't know if you guys have checked out Reach, Stephen Hamner.
Yeah.
So
I was one of the 7.
Yeah, I was on the message board, and people were saying that's their favorite.
That's
podcast.
a big one. Yeah, the message boards are blowing up.
Yes.
But like,
all over Twitter.
No, for real though, man. Like listening to like Ed Milet and some guys who are very positive and intentional about their days. Reading things that encourage me. But yeah, to simplify it, prayer, meditation, time in the Word, and then listening to something that edifies me in like even like the self-help realm. Honestly, like how to be a better person or achiever or leader, or, those types of things. And it doesn't take long at all for me if I get away from that to start feeling like the old me. Like, man, I'm having some of these thoughts, and I, or just even if it's just like losing your temper with someone, you're like, where did that come from, man? Like, what? That's still in me? You know what I mean? So we never turn our tassel. We never, especially with those of us who kind of fight addiction, and it doesn't just go away. I mean, I've heard people say, I got healed. And it's like, that's awesome. And I believe God can do that.
Yeah. That
hasn't been my story. My story has been, you better fight your butt off every day. If you want to, keep what you have, and and a big motivation for me now, Greg, is not letting down the people that look up to me. Yeah. Right? We've got this program. We've got youngsters, and you guys do the same thing. You're mentoring, and it's like, okay, what is that decision going to do for them? What are they going to think? You know what I mean? And it's a battle every single day as we talk about it. I'm like, man, I wish there was a day where it's just like, it's so easy, man. Just get up and encourage everybody, and everything's good, and my bills are paid, and it's just awesome. And it is, but it's like, no. And it even goes back further, Greg. I spoke about in the book, I was sexually abused as a youngster. Those are those things that as men, we're like, whatever, that doesn't put that away, man. But promiscuity was a big deal for me, and lust, and all those things that men battle with, but we don't talk about very much. And so The guys some guys who encouraged me is like Jay Glazer. He's out there right now doing a podcast on mental health, and he's just bearing his soul, man. Like, he's got it all going on. You'd think he can fight. He's a football guy. He's got money. He's like, no, man. Half days I can't get out of bed. So what that does for me, and why now I'm open, is like, okay, I'm not the only one. Because I start to feel, I don't know if you've ever felt this, like, nobody's as messed up as me. Yes. Nobody thinks like I think, man.
Yeah.
I
think that's common in athletes. It's like you kind of single yourself out.
Yeah. So the more, and I'm just speaking amongst men here, but men or women or whoever, but even especially like bigger guys and athletes and leaders and guys like Jay Glazer say, hey, me too. Like, man, I think the stronger we get in numbers of just going, oh, you too? Oh, man, okay, I didn't know you would. I never thought B struggles with that. Well, gosh, okay, we can fight this thing together, kind of strength in numbers type deal. So,
and sort of piggybacking off of that, because I know you're talking about the youth, like, what would you tell 18-year-old Brandon Puffer? Like, what is before you got to that point of using that as a coping mechanism, or, you know, whether it was women or whatever addiction that you had, I'm guessing that sort of that pressure that you put on yourself and just that the trial and error of going through that process of trying to get to the big leagues put that pressure on you, and then you felt like that was some sort of outlet. So what would you tell? We deal with a lot of kids who they want to be great and they want to get to the big leagues and they have that mental pressure, and it's like, you know, sometimes you fall short with words, and it's like, what would you tell a kid who is kind of not heading down that path, but like had all those components sort of playing in, and what could he do to sort of halt it or get control of it before it gets control of him?
That's a heavy hitter, man. That's a really good question.
You want to get deep.
Dude, that is a really good question, man.
What would you tell young you, basically?
That is good,
you know
yeah.
I mean?
And I've actually been asked that question before in exactly that frame. And it's really one of the big lessons through all that is it's not about you. And that Pastor Rick Warren in Purpose Driven Life, I was fortunate enough he wrote it for it. That's the first line of his book. It's not about you. And like, why would that be the first line in one of the all-time bestsellers of all time? And it's because truly, if you can take that perspective, and it doesn't mean you're not having pain, young Brandon. It doesn't mean it doesn't hurt. But because it's all about me at that point in time, I don't want to feel that. I don't care what it does to anybody else. I just want to numb that. I don't want to be in my thoughts. I don't want to do the 12 rounds with Tyson. I don't want to try to go to sleep without taking something. I don't want to do it. But, okay, and it's hard to get a perspective out of a youngster as it is someone who's been through something, right? But I always kind of remind myself, and we say this all the time, if I share this and one person gets it, it's worth it. And then there's going to be 10 other ones that are like, oh, yeah, well, that's not going to happen to me. Because I know. I sat through spring training. They'd bring people in, and, you know, they did it with football. Yeah. And it's like, hey, this happened to this guy. And you're like, oh, that stinks, but that's not going to happen to me.
Yeah. It can't happen to me.
It can't happen to me. And then it does. So being to that young me or that youngster right now who's kind of going down that path, it's just really trying to get to the root of why you're feeling like that. And then, honestly, getting some help. Yeah. Talking to someone, because if you keep it in yourself, I know I didn't have the tools or still don't to deal with it, but I've learned the tools to do it in a more healthy way through trial and error, or just different over the time. But yeah, I mean, that's the biggest thing, and I don't know if that's giving you a pointed answer, but it's like, okay, just think outside of yourself and how this will affect not just you but everyone who loves you and cares about you. And then on top of that, that doesn't mean you can just cold turkey not think like this, because it's not going to stop. So be intentional about what thoughts you put in, because if you don't, right, and as a man thinketh, it just hit me, man. It was about a garden, and he talks about cultivating that garden. And he's like, if you just decide you're not going to do anything to it, it's not going to stop growing. Yeah. Right. So it's going to be weeds. So you got to get in there and do your thing, right? So same with your thoughts. You're not going to stop thinking. Like, as much as I want to go, man, I don't want to think.
Just want to cut it off.
Good luck. So in order to not let all those other thoughts bombard me that do, and they still come, but I don't have to let them land, I've got to have other thoughts. And for me, a lot of times it's scripture. It's like, take every thought captive and obedient to Christ. Take every thought, because, when those thoughts come, if I don't have something to fill it in, I'm not going to stop them. I don't have a defense, man. Like, as a D-line guy, it's like, I don't know what I'm going to do because I haven't thought about it ahead of time.
Gotcha.
When you guys went out there and played ball, you knew what offense you were facing. You knew how they were lined up. You're like, okay, I know what's going on here. I know how to tackle this. Yeah. Quite
preparation,
literally.
kind of the
preparation.
Theme of the book, yeah.
So if they're not prepared, when this stuff happens, they're not going to know how to deal with it. And I didn't have a clue how to deal with it, the pressures or any of the stuff. So how did I deal with it? I just numbed it. I just numbed it until it hit. And I knew every time I did it, just about every time I did it, because, again, I was raised right. I knew right from wrong. I did. It wasn't like I thought, oh, this is okay. as soon as you sober up or wake up the next day, guess what's still there?
I do, yeah.
Your same issue, your same problem, your same thoughts. So what do? You just do it again. And that cycle, as you say it, sounds absolutely insane. And anybody listening would be like, well, why would you do that? But when you're in it, you don't know better because you don't have the tools to deal with it. So I think just getting the tools earlier, being a little more intentional about it, or at least getting around people that have them.
That's the big thing. I
Put
think
people around you that have them, like guys like you.
I think too, like listening to that point, just seeing somebody exhibit that behavior is also important. Yes. Like it's one thing for me to tell a youngster or somebody, hey man, go get help. If they're not seeing me do it, or if I know, to your point about having people that look up to you, when you realize that that person that looks up to me, they may not know that I'm going to do this or doing the work, but I can't demand it out of them if I'm not doing it myself.
That is an excellent point. I don't remember if I talked about it in the book or not, honestly. A point that parallels that for me, and it hits home harder than anything ever. A running joke in my family. I talk to my mom and dad about it every night because, again, I couldn't always do that, man. So now that I can, it's like,
what's up?
Hey, what's up? And they're like, we're good. We're still good. Yeah. And, but when I do a podcast or I do a book, the running joke is, threw me under the bus again. My dad always gets beat up on my thing because he was a tough dude and he had some struggles and that's what I witnessed. And I will tell you this, and I've already told you about my mom. She's a saint. She's Mother Teresa modern day, and I'm not even kidding, man. Like she is amazing. She's the first pastor at Saddleback Church. I call her troublemaker because the Southern Baptists got a little upset about it. And there's a big article. I'm like, look at you causing trouble. Yeah, because she got appointed as a pastor.
Let them get
ordained.
upset.
Yeah, exactly. So, again, there's that. But faith was not something I really went after. I saw her exhibit that. I started walking. I just thought, that's just who she is. That's how she's always been.
Yeah.
When my dad got sober, gave his life to Christ, that's when something woke up in me. Because to your point, I had always heard about it, but the guy I looked up to, this is how he lived. And now he changed his life. I'm like, wait a minute. Shortly after that, I did give my life to Christ in a young adult group at Saddleback Church because I just watched my dad change his life. Yeah. So the guys like us who are leaders and mentors and fathers and all that, it's like they're just watching what you do. Absolutely. And not necessarily what you say. So that's a great point. And that was my experience with my dad. I mean, I had a mom that literally was like, every resource, like, here it is. You got Saddleback Church, and here we go. You're in the doors. And I was like, nah. And then my dad saw his life change. Wait a minute. I'm interested. I want to know what this is about.
You also mentioned the book, and I don't want you to give too much out of
cool.
what you wrote, but I'm trying to protect your puff.
No, you're good. Yeah.
Buy the book.
You're good, man.
Buy the book.
No, it's all
you don't
good.
buy the book. Greg showing up at your
Straight
door.
up.
But just on that topic, talking about people you look up to, you mentioned in the book some pro guys, like when you were young that you looked up to. Can you elaborate a little bit and maybe give a few examples of what they did or kind of stuff that stood out to you? Because you mentioned several guys by name in the book, so if you can just maybe elaborate a bit on that. Because I think that's huge, younger players seeing older players
it
and
is.
kind of like their lifestyle.
It is. And I some of the ones that jumped out at me because, man, it is a tough lifestyle. And I don't mean that as like poor us, we're professional athletes. Like, what? Not that. I get it. It's awesome. Like everyone wants to do it. But you're set up for, especially if you have these demons, man, you're set up to fail in a sense because there's a lot being thrown at you. And like Lance Berkman was one that I mentioned in the book, stood out to me. It was like he just had this balance of being a great ball player, but being a great family guy. And he never really seemed over anxious or over – and I know you guys get a chance to work with some guys like this, and it's like, how did they find that balance, And I just would always kind of almost envy, but also gravitate towards and try to learn from, like, how are they doing this? You know what I mean? And one of the stories I mentioned in the book, this guy had no idea. He'd never remembered this. I actually found him and texted him and said, hey, dude, I wrote a book and you're in it. And he's like, for what? What'd I do? And it was when I was at one of my down times, and I was struggling. I was out there, and I was out of my mind. And we were in Edmonton one night. His name was Marty McCleary. And he was a believer, and he knew that I had 5 years sober and was a believer and was living for the Lord at one point and was not doing that at this point. And he just subtly said to me, man, and this is a good lesson, I think, for any teammate, that he just said, we're in the locker room, and he goes, hey, Pa, I know they're talking about, what you guys are going to do. He goes, you can just come to my room tonight and we just hang out, watch a movie, or, that's always an option. Yeah. Because he knew I didn't want to be alone, because that's, and I just, like, I didn't take him up on it. I went out. But I remember to this day so much so I put it in the only book I'll probably ever write. Who knows? But yeah,
We got more
sequels.
content.
Follow-ups.
But I was like, dude, that subtle little thing of him just being willing in this room full of testosterone and athletes talking about going to party and what we're gonna do, and he's like, you can do that. And I'm like, thank you so. I said thank you, man, and I know where your heart's coming from on that, and I really appreciate that. And I didn't take him up on it, but a guy like that who didn't even have to necessarily, he just walked it out. He just walked it out, man. He wasn't, he'd laugh and have fun with everybody else, and he wasn't like a thumper. He was just like a good dude, man. And he said, hey, you got this outlet if you want it. So those are a couple guys. Scott Linebrink's another one. I got to be on a couple teams with Scott Linebrink, and he had the joy of the Lord that we talked about, that it took me going to surrender. He had it. It was to this day, you see that guy, and he's going to be big smiles, and how's it going? I mean, it didn't matter performance. It didn't matter what he was doing. He just had it. And I would just be like, man, how do these guys have this? What am I missing here? And most of it was just that surrendering. Every guy I just spoke about was just a sold-out, surrendered follower of Christ. And I think every single one of them would say, man, it wasn't perfect. I mean, we'd go home and have our struggles, or we had our times. But for me, looking outside in, it was like, you've got a good balance. Yeah. I was just the most stressed I've ever been in my life was the little bit of time I was in the big leagues. Yeah. I mean, I was stressed. I mean, I got to stay, and I got to have one more good outing, and now I got to work out in between if it was good. I wish I just would have enjoyed it more. Yeah. And I don't admit this to a lot of people. The first time I got sent back to AAA after a longer, maybe almost a whole year stint, I just went, oh, man, okay. And that's not a good mindset to have. Yeah.
Right.
And our players who we teach, we don't teach that mindset. I am honest with them. I said, I just because I teach you guys to bulldog everything and never believe you can be beat and that you belong, and doesn't mean I always walked it out. When I was in big leagues, man, I pitched different than if I was in AAA against the same hitters. It's just the anxiety of
you
the
think
pressure.
It was the expectation that came with that, and not necessarily the expectation of like, oh, I got to perform, but it's the higher level expectation that you put on yourself. Like there's to your point, instead of enjoying it and performing from a place of like, I'm happy to be here and I'm just going to play, without any added level of expectation. I'm just going to play my best game. Like you said, I can pitch the same person just in a different place. So without expectation, I'm in a happier, more joyful sense. But that place, that heavy expectation kind of weighs me down.
I do believe that. I believe that 100%. I believe a lot of it, people talk a lot about the fear of failure, and it's real, but the fear of success is so real. It was like, do I deserve this? Like, I'm in the big league, I'm pitching, and I would let my mind go to those places of like, man, I grew up wanting to do this, and if I do good, can I really have a long career doing this? And just kind of talked myself out of.
Like, you shouldn't be there.
You shouldn't be there. You don't deserve this. And then you go back to AAA, go back to the same way that got you there, and it's right back to you're in your rhythm, you're getting guys out, you're doing your thing, you're happy in the locker room. In the clubhouse, I always believed in respect and be seen and not heard because you're a rookie and all that, and that's good. But I wasn't myself. Yeah. Like I didn't even contribute to like being a happy-go-lucky, fun. I was just always so anxious. And the guys that want to go out after, I'm like, oh, I'm just going to go to the hotel. I don't know. I just want to. And it was just so anxious for me, man. And I don't always, admit that, but I like to because I bet there's a lot of folks that go through that. And the ones who last a long time are the ones who can overcome that. And most of the time it comes down to getting those tools and that self-talk and that, routine throughout the day that you're prepared to just go out and do your thing. Yeah. Right? So, yeah, no, definitely. That's a good question, man.
Man, well, there's so much in the book we could talk about. We could spend hours on your baseball career, hours on that one night. But I want to kind of talk about the end of the book before we get to a few questions that have been submitted, or if you have anything else to talk about. But tell us a little bit about Coach Puff Positive. Okay. Like that's the direction. 'Cause I want to sign up. Like he needs it for sure. You saw his attitude before.
Be a little bit downer.
Yeah, I'm a little Debbie Downer today.
He's a little sicky poo.
Yeah, so we have the GPS Legends Twitter thing. That's our organization. People don't believe me, but I actually do manage that Twitter. They're like, you didn't write that. You didn't do that. I was like, yeah, it's me. I did that. Yeah. And then so when this all came about and the book was coming to fruition and, website, all this stuff, they're like, well, you're going to need a Twitter. You're going to need this. And it was going to be my, separate from that. And I don't think I came up with it. I don't even know who did. They're like, well, you want to be positive. You want positive. In fact, Coach Puff Positive. So I like that, man. So we went with it. And And again, but the one thing about that title is like, okay, so that means you're always happy and always positive. It's like, no, not really. All the stuff I share on there or anywhere is because I need it more than anybody else looking at it,
Yeah.
right? It'll hit me and I'll go, oh, man, this is huge. I'll put it on there and people may be encouraged. That's awesome. That's what I want. But it's like I needed it more than anybody else on there. I struggle with everything I put on there. So it is the idea of just being positive and kind of like going through whatever you're going through and keeping a good attitude and all those things that come along with that. But yeah, and then it's almost like a little bit of pressure. Like, man, what if I'm in a bad mood? You're Coach Puff positive. You can't. Well, you're not positive. I'm positive you're in a bad mood.
Yeah.
So yeah, I just, again, not to lay any expectation, but that's what it was about. Is just the intention of sharing the story is to positively impact people.
Yeah. Well, do y'all have anything else you want to talk about the book specifically? Because it's been a pretty heavy podcast. We didn't even know, but it's been a lot of stuff.
I got one just on some like fan stuff, man. How was it being a part of the World Series? Like the dub, the team that year, like how was it?
That's a good question. Unfortunately, my answer is going to let you down a little bit because I wasn't there for the run, right? So how that all went down, Greg, and it's kind of some funny story and parallels around it, is I was with the San Diego Padres to start that season. I was in the big leagues, living close to my hometown. Life was good, right? Yeah, I was like, I'm living on the beach in San Diego, going back and forth with my parents every weekend, whatever. And then we went on a flight home one night, and they said I got traded to the Red Sox. And they said, hey, you're going to Fenway. They need this, that, and the other. And I'm like, awesome. By the time the flight landed, they had signed for another pitcher as well, and now I'm going to Pawtucket to AAA on the East Coast. And I was in the big leagues in San Diego, and I'm like, so they're like, you're going to be in Boston real quick, whatever. I said, okay, yeah, great. Go to Pawtucket, do my thing. Probably spent the last month and a half of the season there. Early September, I get the call. They're like, you're going Fenway. The bullpen's depleted. They need you. And how baseball works is they expand their rosters in September. So once you make it in September, like you're there, barring anything crazy, right? So I'm like, go ride this ride with Fenway, right? So I didn't mess it up, but I probably would have. And I get there. I go day one, playing catch at Fenway, sit in the bullpen. They're doing the thing. Derek Lothar was a complete game. Bullpen gets the rest. Johnny Damon dove for a ball and hurt his finger, and they thought it was broken. So they called up another dude from AAA named Adam Heisdu, sent me out. So I was there a day and a half, right? So I watched it just like you guys if you watched it. Didn't expect anything about World Series, none of that stuff, right? I didn't have. The only way I contributed, though, is when I was with the Padres, we played an interleague game in Fenway. They beat our butt, and I did pitch. So I'm like,
oh, man.
I did contribute a little bit to that one. So, man, trust me, if I would have been on that ride and that whole thing, I'd still be I wouldn't even know how to respond to that because that must have been just amazing. But I wasn't there, man. I was just watching on TV. And then the following spring training, I'd re-signed with the Giants, I believe. And I got a call from the office of the boss and say, hey, what's your ring size? Anyone who was on the roster. I was like, I didn't pitch an inning. Like I didn't. And I think it was
like you're getting one too.
First time in 100 years, I think they were just real happy with it. Peanut vendor, ring. Yeah. And I think 2 years later, they wanted it again. They were probably like, well, let's back it up a little bit. But yeah, so man, I didn't get to experience that run. And actually at the time they won it, I really had no expectation of being a part of that in terms of getting a ring or anything.
Well, was it cool to just be in Fenway and sort of like, because I don't know nothing about baseball if y'all don't know, but I know Fenway is like one of the historical places. So
it is. It is. So I had played in Fenway as a visitor. I played in Wrigley as a visitor. Wearing the home Red Sox uniform in Fenway, and it was literally one game. Yeah, was amazing. Didn't pitch, didn't get in, which was great too because I just got to enjoy it. As soon as they would have called my name to warm up, that's when they let's go. And it's like so I just got to take it in, man. Low through that perfect game and. Yeah, Fenway is one of the
terrible decision by them, by the way, to let you go. Yeah,
I agree. Thank you. It's funny. Theo Epstein was the GM. It was his decision, and Terry Francona was the manager. And he told me the news, and then he goes, I don't get this, man. We don't do this to people. He goes, this isn't right. And I was like, it's baseball, man.
You're doing it to me, though.
You're doing it. So I can stay then? I'm good? He's like, no, you got to go.
You don't have to put me in. Just like stay on the
just hang, So it was, Fenway is amazing. What a history the Red Sox have. Cool, it was pretty neat, man, for sure.
Well, anything else be on your end from
you good. Go ahead and ask the questions.
Someone say something to fill up some space as I find these questions.
How much
What-
you benching, bro?
Hey, that's a question.
Oh,
That's the
goodness.
first one. So that's the first one. Rapid fire. So real quick,
Yeah.
you've probably seen this in their podcast. We're just copying it like a rapid fire question.
And every
right?
time they do it, I'm like, why do they do that to those people? They need to
Yeah,
be
well,
prepared. Now
yeah.
you're doing it to me.
Now we're doing
Yeah.
it to you. I did not prepare him, but now he knows the first answer, or the first question. But Puff sometimes will send me videos of him bench pressing. I'm like, my gosh. And he's like, man, my shoulders kind of bother me. I'm like, yeah, because you're benching 400 pounds. But anyway,
Man.
so all these questions are
Uh-huh.
submitted from either a current player of yours,
Oh,
a
wow.
former player, maybe a father or two, a coach. Yeah, so just
Yeah.
people like, and
That's
I
awesome,
can kind
man.
of share who all sent one at some point, but it's rapid fire, and if you take longer, who cares? So,
Okay,
yeah.
gotcha.
All right, so first question is exactly what Greg asked, and we'll see actually who has benched more. Yeah. All right, bench PR.
I think because I've never done like a one rep,
Yeah.
about 380. And I know I've done 365 about 5 times.
My
I've
goodness.
seen that.
Yeah.
You're probably about 405.
And the big key to that is, as a pitcher weighing 185, with everybody telling you for 15 years, don't bench, don't do this, don't do that. As soon as I was done, I'm like, that's all I'm going to do. That's all I'm going to do is the stuff I
Slow,
couldn't
yeah.
do.
That's
That's what everybody
so-
says, yeah.
Yeah, exactly. So I fall into that category.
Yeah,
That's,
yeah. Well, me and you we got the same bench press.
yeah, we're right there. Perfect. Yeah.
All right, bicep size. You want to know who has
This is a guess.
Yeah.
I hope you know this is a guess because I'm not out there with the tape.
You got some
I'm
22s
going to say like
on you?
18.
18, I think it's probably.
think you got some 22s on you.
Yeah,
bro. You got
absolutely.
some
Deuces?
Yeah.
Yeah,
I think
absolutely.
I'll take it, man. I don't know.
That was an Austin Plante question.
Of
right
course
there.
it was. Yeah. I'm surprised he didn't ask me about great hair or something. He's got the best hair.
This got some good hair,
It's
doesn't
good.
it?
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm jealous. Okay,
Same.
if you had a walkout song as a pitcher, what would it be?
So I've had a few.
Okay.
Right?
Okay.
So, yeah, I've done that.
Yeah.
I came out to Here Comes the Boom by P.O.D.
Nice.
Couple times in the minor leagues, I kept it light, bringing sexy back.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You know, whatever like
Oh, yeah.
the big pop hit of the summer
Yeah.
was.
Yeah.
Like, I'm coming out to that.
Yeah.
But, the only big league walkout song I can remember is Here Comes the Boom by P.O.D.
What would it be right now to this day if you had to walk out? Like
Today.
like you are the manager at GPS, you're coming out. Like Jake Melvin just gave 8 runs. We're all pissed at him. Like
This sounded really realistic.
sorry, Jake.
Sorry, Jake.
No,
Love you.
but he's never done that before.
No,
does he?
no,
But
never.
What's your walkout song as a manager?
Man,
Yeah.
I want to go to The Blessing by Carrie Jobe, or
Nice.
what's the one, I have shared it before, and it's getting away from me right
Is it a
now.
Maverick City song?
It's about his love, and it's a man, Corey Asbury. Reckless Love.
Yep.
'Cause
Reckless Love.
I don't know what it is, man. Like when I work out, I still listen to like rock and whatever and hip hop, but those songs just pump me up in like a different way. Like just, oh man, you know what I mean? So I like to bring that in, and I did. There were some times I came out to Jesus Freak by DC Talk
Okay.
and stuff like that. But yeah, those would probably be one of those two.
I like that. Okay, have you been ejected more as a coach or player, including coaching now and playing
Yeah.
professionally?
Probably as a player.
Okay.
Yeah, and it's not a bunch. I mean, it was like a handful of times as a player and maybe 2 or 3 as a coach, I
We're
think.
not talking like 40 and 50 times.
Yeah.
All right. The toughest hitter you ever pitched against?
That's a good one. I've heard that one before. So the guy who owned me the most by far was Chipper Jones. Just absolutely destroyed me. Like, didn't matter what I threw, where, what. He just had, it was like, I mean, it wasn't a huge sample. It was like 5 for 5 with rockets, like nothing cheap. But then, Bonds and Pujols got to be right up there.
Yeah.
But Chipper owned me more than anybody
Wow.
else. Yeah.
He owned a bunch of people. So
He
yeah.
did.
Yeah,
He
don't
did. He was
feel
a
bad.
decent hitter, yeah.
All right. What was your go-to pitch?
It was a 2-seamer, a sinker. I was a sidearm guy, so
Okay.
I relied on movement.
Yeah.
So it was just a 2-seam fastball.
I like that. That's what mine is too. On
Yeah,
on the
77
path
on the
yeah.
black.
Well, going to 90, Puff. Don't.
That's right, road to 90.
Road to
Road to
I'm very
90.
close to
Yeah.
90 on my
Yeah.
way.
Yeah. Okay. The best GPS team you've coached.
Ooh.
It's always the current one.
Nice.
That's a good answer.
And
bro.
so Wesley Gafford, shout out to Wes. I love him. He's one of my favorite players of all time. He was on like one of my first teams. He's at St. Ed's right now.
Okay.
Probably going to be a professional guy, I think. And every summer he's like, we're the best team you ever had. I think Plante was on his team. They all kind of like get a little, and every year he's like, who's the best team you had? I said, the one I got right now. No, they're not. We were da-da-da-da. I said, we're the same.
Yeah.
But we're playing harder tournaments now. We played in cupcake tournaments back then. So every time someone asks me that, it's like the team I got now.
Yeah.
They'd be like, what are you doing? I said, coach, the best team I've ever had.
That's good.
Yeah.
That was
good.
either, I can't remember if it was Plante or our boy Jacob Wilk. It was one of them two that asked that
I
question.
could see Palante, but I might have a spoiler. Now I know who asked about the topo.
Yep.
Right?
Yep.
I know my
We're gonna
guys.
get
Yeah,
there.
I know
You
my
your
guys.
All right. When did you hit 90? When was the first time you hit 90?
In high school,
Okay.
my sophomore year, I believe.
Sophomore year.
Mhm.
Okay.
Jesus.
Yeah. But your first time's coming up.
Yeah, I'll be 33. when I
33,
hit
wow.
90. Yeah, 33. Yeah.
Absolutely.
So times your sophomore year by 2. That's gonna be my first time.
Awesome.
To hit 90.
Yeah, I
Thank you
can't
for,
wait.
Hey, thanks for the encouragement.
You got it, brother.
Hey,
Coach Puff positive.
Puff positive, my guy. This is my question. What was the hardest you ever threw? What would you top out at?
The hardest pitch I threw
Yeah.
that I know of is 94.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's shoving.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Same.
Greg threw 57, by the way, guys.
Why would you just
Just put
It
it
was
out
a
there.
change.
palm ball?
I know.
Palm
Hey,
ball.
Change.
Brandon's pitch didn't even register on the actual radar gun.
Such
Never
a
thrown
hater,
it.
bro. I hope you throw your arm out.
So
Oh, shots fired.
You're on the list you don't want to be on. Okay, congratulations, you made the list. That's not a good list to be on. All right, so you're not gonna have an answer to this one. Your favorite kid to coach?
You're right. That's so hard, man. Oh, gosh. You know what? I'm going to do it.
Oh, okay.
Wow.
I love this.
Let's
I
go.
love this. Reach training exclusive.
I hope. So let me preface.
Okay.
I hope that just about every player I've coached knows how much I love them.
Yeah.
And they don't all love me back because some of them I've had to hold accountable
Yeah.
more than they want to.
Yeah.
But, man, Ty Jackson, we've talked about this.
Yeah.
There's just something about that young man. It's his blue-collar work ethic, and he doesn't have everything everybody else had. I'm not putting all his business out, but it's just but his attitude just never
Just the
he
attitude.
encouraged the heck out of me.
Mhm.
Knowing what his day looked like before he came to practice, waking up at 6 in the morning, construction, sunburn, literally peeling on his neck because he's out there doing construction all day
Wow.
and has more energy than anybody else. It's hard to not love that kid. And I do. There's a lot. West stands out. Palante stands out. I mean, those guys from the early days.
You got a list up. You got
Yeah,
a bunch.
now I'm feeling bad. I'm like, well, this guy and that guy. And that guy. You got my
Walking it
rosters
back.
on there? Yeah. But I don't know, man. And that was just this year. So maybe it's just so fresh. But what a young man. Ty Jackson.
Yeah,
Man.
that's a good one. All right, your favorite Topo Chico flavor?
Limon. Lime.
All right. Your favorite brand inside short. So I guess that means your size.
Same guy asked that question. That's
Yeah.
Wilk.
Yep.
Right?
Yep.
Yeah.
You did.
Right now I'm on those. I'm on Tommy John's.
Okay. I haven't done that.
Probably not back then, but right now. Oh, that and 32 degrees. They got the
Okay.
real soft, cottony. Jacob Wilk had to stay with us one weekend, Coach Gordo and I, because his folks weren't coming. After all the things that we did or didn't do or whatever, for whatever reason, an impression was left on him. When he went home, he said to his mom, he goes, I need to get some inside shorts. And she's like, what does that mean? And he's like, every time Coach Puffer gets home, he puts on his inside shorts. And I'm like, I just change out of my stuff, shower, and put on comfy
Yeah.
shorts. So I guess I called them my inside shorts. So,
That's
and I'm
funny.
still rocking it. Yeah, as soon as I get home, I'm getting comfy, man.
For sure.
All right,
That's awesome.
Your favorite minor league moment?
Oh wow.
It can be baseball related. It can be
Yeah.
some funny mascot,
Yeah.
whatever.
Oh, okay. Yeah. It's funny because I was going to some cool moments of like the AA All-Star game or this or that. I got to dance on field with Myron Noodleman, who was an on-field entertainer. He picked me one time. We did the Macarena together. So then every time he come in town after that, he's like, "Who's gonna do it?" And everyone's like, "He's like, Puff, you'll do it." And I'm like, "I'll do it." So I had fun doing those kind of things. I got in the Puffy Taco mascot down in San Antonio. We were tied in like the 11th inning. I needed something to, we hit a bomb, went ahead. So good rally mascot outfit. It was
That's
pretty
funny.
nice. Yeah.
Do you do lower body day?
Today, as a matter of fact, Steven,
go.
was leg day.
There you go.
Let's
I
go.
do the legs
boys
as
know.
much
Okay.
as I do the upper. They don't grow quite the same.
Yeah.
I'm a little top heavy. I think I know where the question's coming from. Yeah, yeah, I get that from the guys. Like, Coach Puff, you get in a fight, you're not kicking anybody, right? I'm like, no, it's all hands. Yeah.
That's funny.
The last question we got. This was sent from someone. You'll be able to guess. They just told me to show you this picture.
Connor Freeman.
Does that? Yeah, it's Connor. Does that
Yeah,
mean anything?
it
Second
does.
base, like
He got pretty excited on that. The kids, they like to slide in and do a little dance to the dugout or a gesture to the dugout. I see that wasn't in Melissa. When you get Connor Freeman in Melissa mode, that's when things get real. But that wasn't Melissa. But that was just a really good celebration on his part. A lot of tongue flapping and like there was even like gyrations going on. I was like, Free? I didn't think you had that in you, man. Like, where'd that
Let's
come
go.
from? Yeah,
Interesting.
so
We'll have
that's
to
a
bring
good
that
one.
up to him
That's
next
funny.
week.
Oh,
Yeah.
he's a pearl, man. He's awesome.
That's funny.
We'll have to
Yeah.
bring that up, man. Well, man, that's all we got. Before we kind of wrap this thing up,
Yeah.
do you want to kind of tell everyone like what they can do to find you if they want to reach out, if they want to talk more? Like,
Yeah,
what
I
could
will
be some
say
next
this
steps?
real quick
Yeah,
before he goes. Sorry, I sound like this. I'm sniffling, but
It's been emotional, bro.
I
It's
told
been
you about.
emotional.
I told
Yeah.
you about it.
He gets choked up.
But I will say this. One, I want to give you your flowers and your credit. A good book. And then also, two, I will say that watching you, I know we talk about your ability to encourage people, but I also think that is rooted in an ability to speak to somebody and not necessarily talking just, vocally back and forth, but some way, somehow touching somebody's spirit. I do believe that's a gift. And in your book, you made a comment, just doing what you were born to do, which is throw a ball really hard. I think within that, you were also born to, your gift is speaking to people's spirits.
Oh, wow.
You had an example where you were in, one of the stories when you were in prison and you talked to a dude and, this guy was in for consecutive life sentences and, he told you at the end that he was going to, take his own life before you came in there.
Wow.
And that being an example of that gift. And I do have a question from that. From then until now, obviously before, born to throw a ball hard and all that. And I like talking about to the kids because it's a thing of there's what you were born to do. Like I was talking about, this guy was born with these talents and X, Y, and Z. But if those talents were only to be used on a sport, when that sport ends, so your gift is something you will exhibit until the day you die and can exhibit. So I would say, what would you say, to put a button on this whole conversation in the book, what would you say, looking at your life now, what would you say is your calling?
Oh, that's a great question, B. First of all, thank you, man. I received that. Thank
Yeah.
you so much. Those are kind words, and that touches me to hear that you see it in that way, and that encourages me to try to further that. And I think definitely, getting a bigger picture of this thing, baseball was and is and kind of gives me a little bit of a platform to speak into lives. So I certainly no longer believe, to your point, that was what I was born to do. Not at all. I feel like that was a part of my life that led to me being able to speak into these young men's life, that led to maybe having a little bit of a platform that gives me something where they'll listen, right? They'll go, well, yeah, because he made it here. So if it's good for that, that's awesome. I loved it. I enjoyed it. But I think my calling now is, and Steve, you said it earlier, is just to encourage as many people as I can. Just if they're struggling, they're trying to achieve, if they're whatever it is, just come alongside them and encourage them. And so that's why I like listening to podcasts of guys who are very, very encouraging, because it reminds me, man, shoot someone a message if it's on your heart, or shoot an encouraging word, or maybe it's just a smile, man. Like I have been so surprised how just walking by and smiling at someone can do something. So, I think that is my calling, to try to continue to encourage and try to, help folks move along in their calling by encouraging them. And even if that means sharing how far back I had to go and fall to get there, you can never, ever, ever out-sin God's grace or make a decision that takes you out of what he has for you. So let's just encourage you to move forward with that. So I think that's my calling, and I hope I do get to walk that out for as long as I'm here.
Yeah.
Yeah, man. Thank you, B. That's a good question, man. And I appreciate the encouragement.
Yes, sir.
That was good. Good job, B.
Oh, yeah. Where can people find you?
Okay, yeah. BrandonPuffer.com. Pretty simple there, right? Everything's pretty much on there. Brandon Puffer. Yep. And then, like you alluded to, but it's on there, Coach Puff Positive, POSITV is the Twitter.
Okay.
That's what I'm most active on. We have an Instagram and some other things going on. But, I think if you go to BrandonPuffer.com, it's all on there, man.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Good stuff. Well, guys, thank you so much, Puff, for being on with us, man. That was
Oh, it was a
awesome.
pleasure,
Our
man.
first person we interviewed.
Yeah, that's
Right?
First
awesome.
guest
So,
is what you're
first
trying
guest.
to say. First guest on
Well,
the
I'm
podcast.
glad I got in, because when you guys start getting the heavy hitters, I wouldn't have made it on.
Oh, no.
No,
bro.
you always got a spot. Yeah,
absolutely.
you always got a
Come back.
spot. But yeah, go check out the book and subscribe, all that fun YouTube stuff. And thank you so much again.
My pleasure, man. Thank you for having me.
Thank you.
Cool.